Yeah, things have been going great. You know, the team atmosphere is super fun. We're coming out with new products. World is coming up, so we're excited about that. And just overall, everything's been really great. Absolutely. Jared and I have been friends for a long while. We raced together for a long time, obviously. But yeah, we try to separate our work and our friendship when we have to. But otherwise, yeah, we've grown really close. We have fun at the races, and I think that's a big part of success in any industry. So we try to keep it fun. We also try to keep it serious, and so far it's working well for us. Yeah, silly season. Yeah, I don't really know what the plan is overall for Jared. And if he was to leave to go to a different team, I think that I'm pretty secure at Kyosho, and I would stay. Not that I don't like working with Jared or anything. It's just my job is with Kyosho America, and whatever happens with him, if we can continue to work together, that's great. If not, we'll just kind of move forward as we have to. It's going to be hard to narrow it down. I don't think it's who's going to have the biggest change. I think there's just going to be a lot of changes. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what kind of rolls out as well. Yeah, I think the industry as a whole has kind of wanted to go in that direction for a while now. We just really haven't done anything to move it that way. So essentially, that's what RC National Series is an attempt to go that direction, and hopefully we can get everyone on board to make it happen. Yeah, it certainly isn't, and it's not really like I woke up one morning and wanted to do this. It's something that I feel just needs to be done. No one else was really doing it, and so I'm kind of taking on the task of hopefully making something happen. And even if it doesn't happen through me, hopefully this kind of kickstarts some sort of direction that heads that way. So. Yeah, I think the cash payback thing is just to follow like every other industry has. The reason behind it is obviously it brings in the pros, the best of the best talent will want to come, and it gives the guys in the amateur classes more of a reason to bump up out of a stock class or an open class to get into the pro ranking and try to make some money. And so there's not as much sandbagging going on. Of course, there'll be cash payout in the amateur classes. However, there'll be quite a bit more in the pro class. So it's just some sort of way to regulate that and hopefully allow people to move up. Not just like, hey, I can get the same trophy if I win stock versus if I won mod. So yeah. Yeah, this is probably my biggest pet peeve, and ironically enough, most industry leaders are the only ones that really try to back or support our current format. You ask any racer, spectator, race director, track host, whoever, seems like across the board our current format isn't the best per se. So my antidote to this is to start. I want to shorten the event completely, and I think that we're the only industry that has events this long for no reason. The cream's going to rise to the top regardless, and so doing so, we would have a hole punch system for practice, and you would have X amount of runs, which eliminates a lot of stress as a racer, so you're not standing in line all the time and worried about who has the most track time, and it just makes it better. And then moving into qualifying would be one qualifier, your best three consecutive laps. And the reason I think three consecutive laps is the best direction to go is because it's a mix between consistency and speed. It's not just one single fast lap, and it's also not 5-minute run of consistency. It's a little bit of both. And then from there on out, you would move into your double main format for both electric and nitro. So for instance, if you were to qualify in the E main or the E mains, you would race 2 mains. Combined points is how you would bump into the next main. And on top of that, if you were to break in one of your mains, so you only have 1 time counting, after the round, everyone up into the A mains has been accounted for. The top 10 fastest single run times would go into an LCQ group, and we would bump 1 or 2, whatever we decide to do, into the main event as well. So there's potentially, well, first there's a lot more racing involved, and potentially there's a lot more chances for everyone to make it into the show. So we'll have a point series that kind of follows larger scale racing a little bit. So the points will crown an overall national champion in the pro classes only. At first I wanted to have an East Coast, West Coast point system. However, I think it's a little bit more important for at least RC right now to maybe keep the West and East Coast as just individual races in the amateur and the stock classes. That way people don't feel obligated like they have to travel as much. And what we can do is use those races as qualifiers to get into the pro class if people are interested. So essentially, if you were to finish the top 3 at any of the, let's say, West or East races, you would get a chance at maybe getting, your pro card that way. We can work it that way. I think that's the direction I kind of want to go in. And you wouldn't be limited to only being able to race the West races or the East races. You could race them all if you were attempting to try to get in the top 3 to get your pro license. And then moving into the actual point system itself for the pro classes, it would be, I want to have a TQ point just to kind of make things a little bit more interesting, as well as not just your typical first place 100 points, second place 99 points, third place 98 points. I actually want it to go, so 1 TQ point, first place 100 points, second place 97 points, so a 3-point gap, and then third place 95 points, so a 2-point gap, and then from there on out 94 points, 93 points, 92 points, just increments of 1. That way it kind of keeps things interesting throughout the whole season. If a driver is to maybe win the first 2 rounds, he'll have a pretty good points lead, but then something could happen where he's maybe doesn't even make the main or has a bad finish, and someone sitting 6th in points wins, and those 3-point gaps, that would really kind of help even things out throughout the series without anyone running away from it, or with it, I should say. I think that's kind of the direction that we were trying to pull for, and we would like to have, like I said, it's all scheduled in here right now to have top 10 awards and cash payout for the series in each of the pro classes. So mod buggy, or mod 2-wheel buggy, mod 4-wheel buggy, pro nitro 8 scale, and pro nitro truggy. For the electric series, I want to just keep it simple with 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive modified for the pro class, and 13.5 4-wheel drive and 17.5 2-wheel drive for the amateur classes. Nitro series would be nitro buggy and nitro truggy in a pro division and amateur division. And the reason doing so is it keeps costs down. You don't have to bring as much stuff to the races if you're potentially running 3 or 4 classes. And there's a lot less to work on at the events. So from a pro perspective, they have more time to go hang out in the pits and talk to maybe some of these up-and-coming drivers and the amateurs and the community as a whole, because currently you go to these races and a minimum of 3 classes is being ran by the pros, as well as the amateurs sometimes too, because they want to follow in the footsteps. And what happens is you go to these events and you sit in your cubicle the whole time and you don't ever get up and talk to anyone. And especially in the pros, it's so serious and you have so much work to do that you never get to go talk to the actual community of RC, the customer base, and the people that are just there to have a good time. And I think that relationship needs to be a little bit stronger than it currently is, and I think it'll help everyone. Yeah, I will be attending all the events if this concept becomes reality. I have budgeted in the business model to have a crew doing everything, so I wouldn't have any major role other than being the orchestra director, if you will, to kind of make sure all the gears are turning in the right direction. But yeah, I would definitely be at these events, potentially racing a class or two. But really, I would just want to see everyone having a good time, so if that would affect things, then I wouldn't race. I would just be there to make sure everything's running smoothly. We're not affiliated with Roar at all, and most of that is I haven't attempted to reach out to them at all, and I'm not really sure they would be on board. In my mind, in theory, it would be great to have Roar aboard just because that's what we use to get into the IFMAR worlds. And I think that they would be able to do a very good job at, they already currently have all of our rules in place, and they would be good to have at events to do all the tech inspection. And all the complaints that people say about Roar right now, I think could be kind of solved if their only role was tech enforcement and creating rules, because right now they have to host all these different events and organize them and get awards and this and that, and it affects them being able to properly enforce rules and update rule books and talk to manufacturers about upcoming rules in the future, yada yada yada. So like I said, in concept it would be great to just have them do that side of things, and in my business plan we already have budgeted for a tech person, whether it be from Roar or if we have to create our own rules, or just hire someone to enforce tech, no matter the rule base that we go with. So that's just kind of where we're at with that right now. Kind of following up on the last question, nothing is set in stone as far as using Roar rules. On the concept site, we have it as we're using Roar rules, but I think that we'll just go in whatever direction makes the most sense and it's beneficial for our series. Yeah, the overall goal of our series is to set an industry standard and kind of make this the pinnacle of our sport in America, at least. And I think that it'll benefit everyone, from the manufacturers to the racers. And here's kind of how the manufacturers don't have to spend as much money on their drivers to getting them to races, because the duration of the events are a lot shorter, so that's a lot less money they have to spend on hotels and rental cars, fuel at the races, paying food per diem for their drivers. And from a racer's perspective, as like an amateur, it makes a lot more sense, for the exact same reasons. We're not spending, if we have allocated $1,000 of budget that we can play with RC cars a month for maybe like a father and a son team that are traveling around racing, and they're spending most of that budget on hotels and rental cars because events are 6 days long essentially, and they have to take off work and the kid has to take off school. I think it makes it a lot more difficult, and all that money that is being spent on hotels and rental cars and fuel isn't being put back into the RC racing community via at hobby shops or online stores, buying product. So I think it just makes more sense in that direction and aspect of things, so the companies are actually saving money and potentially making more money because the customer base can actually spend it with them. And I think having a series of the pinnacle of our sport in each event allows maybe some of these trophy races to kind of fall off a little bit and people to actually club race, because the problem is right now with our series, if you were to race the electric series only, that's 6 races every other month. So now if you have these set aside that I want to go to these 6 big races a year, and they're every other month, and the time in between you might not hit as many like other big races or trophy races because they don't hold as much prestige. So you're going to start club racing a lot more to practice. So people might think, well, that's bad that there's not as many trophy races. But right now, the problem is everyone's holding so many trophy races. There's a big race. There's overlapping races every single weekend because that's how they make money, because no one club races anymore. So our series, every year you'll be allowed to try to become on the circuit, so hopefully the tracks will switch around quite a bit and everyone will get a piece of the pie. And like I said, I hope that this would be able to trickle down to where these are the main races in RC, kind of like how it was back in the day, and that's it. And everything else will just translate into club racing. And not that I'm trying to put trophy races out or I think that they're a bad thing. I'm sure they'll still exist. I'm sure they'll still get awesome entry counts. But the problem is I think we have too many and not enough club racing. Well, I released some dates just based on what I've seen that's released for 2019 so far. As far as races that are already established, I tried to work around them the best I could. But those aren't concrete. Those can still change as well. And like I said, this is still all a concept, so it doesn't even mean that it's necessarily going to happen for sure. But I did make a post trying to move forward with this concept about, if you're interested in becoming a track on the circuit, please email me. And we had an overwhelming response, and surprisingly a lot of very well-known tracks that I was grateful for just reading those messages. It's kind of cool to see the support come from that side of the industry of like they want to be part of it as well. But if you are interested, you just email over at info@rcnationalseries.com. Once again, that's info@rcnationalseries.com. It's on the website rcnationalseries.com. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from a whole bunch of different tracks and hopefully finding the best fitting ones if this becomes a reality. As far as what we're looking for is enough pit space, restrooms, how close are you to an airport, can you accommodate 150 people, 300 entries, all that good stuff. So. Yeah, the biggest hurdle has just been doing this as a one-man show. Before I could get my thoughts on to a concept website, it's hard for people to understand what I'm trying to really do and the direction we're trying to go. But now that we have a foundation, it seems like a lot more people are actively involved and want to see it happen and are doing whatever they can to see it move forward. And we've gotten to the point now, the hardest part, I would say, is getting sponsorship money. A lot of people are going to freak out, but we need $100,000 to make this happen. And there's essentially 3 ways to do this, and it's not as much money as people think. And the reason I'm saying that is because you look at maybe like a supercross team. There's so many like small supercross teams, rally racing teams, all these IMCA modified. Just like there's so much racing and money being thrown at racing around the world. $100,000 isn't as much as people think, especially that's for both series combined. So there's 3 ways of going around it. We can get like a corporate sponsor, and like I said, that would make a lot of sense because we can kind of sell on the fact that this is an industry that a lot of kids use to stay active, not playing video games, keeps them out of trouble going through school. A lot of kids don't play sports. They like racing, but maybe their family can't afford to race real cars or dirt bikes, so they can come over here. And it brings a lot of families together. You see a lot of father-son action going on out there. And there's been a lot of females into the industry as well. So we can use that to try to bring in some corporate sponsors. And our industry is quite big. We can use like Team Associated as an example. They have almost 500,000 Facebook likes alone. There's YouTube videos of racing that have a big amount of views, especially when you compare numbers to something like drone racing. But even BMX, rally, a lot of like rally cross racing, and some of the small amateur supercross riding. So we have a big following, which I think is a good selling point to maybe a big corporate sponsor. So that's one way of going about it. Another way would be using inside the industry sponsors. Let's say we had to get 10 inside the industry sponsors at $10,000 a pop. I think that's also achievable, maybe a little bit difficult. And then the third way is at each event we could try to find hometown sponsors. So say there was an event, we'll just use my hometown as an example, Bakersfield, California, and one of the rounds was held there. We could try to develop some sort of proposal that we go get 10 $1,000 sponsors of locals here in this town, in this area, and for each event, if we could do that, that would also raise our $100,000. So there's a few ways around it. I'm kind of trying to put all those options on the table. If one doesn't work, we can fall back on the other. But whether it happens or not this year, I think that's going to be our biggest hurdle and challenge. So if we can't make that happen in time for this year, I'm just going to keep trucking and try to make this happen for 2020. But I think there's enough people in the industry, and hopefully this video and this interview with Live RC helps, that we can either do it internally in the industry, or someone might know someone or a connection that might help us link up with someone outside the industry, whether it be like an energy drink company, beef jerky, a bank, whatever it may be, and we can hopefully move forward and get some sponsorship money. If you're looking to find any more info on RC National Series, you can just head over to the website right now. Like I said, it's all a concept, but it is www.rcnationalseries.com, and you can find a breakdown of everything that we are trying to do, as far as like the format, if you have any more questions on that, the cash payout breakdown, how many races there are, where they're going to be, why we're doing certain things. And you can also see the concept of what we're trying to achieve on the website as like driver spotlights, a little bit of the industry news of what's going on. We would like to have a fantasy league that brings the rest of the RC community that might not be interested in going to these big events but like to follow it still, or just couldn't make it. They could still feel a part of it by having a fantasy league like most other industries have, and of course do some prizes and giveaways in that direction. You can see the points, how we have the points on there. It's all a concept. We have driver, kind of just like the drivers of our industry would probably just be in the pro class, and you can see what that's about. So there would be a driver profile section. Yeah, just go head on over to rcnationalseries.com and check it out for yourself. Yeah, I think 2019 is going to be awesome. I just want to take a second to say thank you to Live RC for reaching out to do a little write-up on this. And in closing, I kind of just want to give you guys a little message that means something to me and I try to hang on to. And it doesn't just attribute to this concept of my site or the series as a whole. It's a little bit harder to change the older generation's mind, but hopefully any kids or younger generation people that are watching this to realize that like certain people might have got to a certain point in this interview, in this video, and got to maybe, let's say, the format section and just thought, oh, that'll never work, blah blah blah, and had some limiting beliefs. Or maybe you got to the part about the sponsorship money and how much we need to make this happen and thought that's too much, no one, it's impossible. And what I want to say is the limiting belief, whether it be something as simple as trying to create a series like this, or inventing something, or trying to achieve a certain goal in a sport that you're into, or that you might not be good enough to talk to that person or that certain girl. Like, anything's achievable. The proof's in the pudding. I can go outside right now and look into the sky and there's tubes flying around. People are in them, and we're transporting that way. Right now I'm talking to you from a little camera this big. You're watching on an internet connection via Wi-Fi somehow on the internet, and that's the world that we live in. And if you would have said any of that was possible 100 years ago, people would have laughed in your face and thought you were crazy and potentially burnt you at the stake for being a witch. So I just want people to start thinking outside the box a little bit more, especially the younger generation. No matter what it is, maybe you stray away from RC in the future and you have ideas in your head that you want to achieve. I think the biggest thing is when you have something like that and you're passionate about it is to put the work in behind it. That's the part that sucks, and I think that's why it's easy to just point fingers and say stuff's impossible. And because a lot of people they have great ideas and they don't move forward, and then they start believing themselves that things aren't possible, and then they grow up and they start pointing the finger at other people that want to try to achieve something or have some sort of idea that it isn't possible because they might have never really unleashed their potential. So that's kind of the message. And like I said, it doesn't really have to attribute to my series of me trying to get people to buy into it. I just think in general, as a community, we need to try to support each other more in that direction. And anything really is possible. So keep on trying, and hopefully we achieve some great success in 2019 with the series. If not, we're going to keep pushing for 2020. Thank you guys for the support.